Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Travelers DFS Tactics show. We have quite a bit to get into, but first a couple of announcements, or at least a couple of field changes. If you have not seen, Brooks Koepka has withdrawn. The big news there is he is joining the Live. So he withdrew yesterday after that announcement. And then earlier today, Justin Thomas withdrew from some back injury or back issues. So if you've already submitted your lineups, make sure you go change or at least check those to make sure you don't have Brooks or JT in them. But we have a great show, a lot to get into. We're here for all of your pivots and your fades, your last minute lineup questions, lineup constructions, all of that type of stuff. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is going to make you a much better gambler, a much smarter DFS player. It's simply the best tool out there. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the descriptions to the videos, there are links to my social media. This is where I place my betting cards for the golf content I create. That will be tonight after the show, after I finalize my own DFS lineups. And then any interesting research that I find throughout the week, I post on social media for the baseball and golf content. So if you want to see some of the research that I do, make sure you give me a follow at the links in the descriptions. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. As I mentioned, I want to hear from you all. Who are your top pivots? Who are you fading? What kind of lineup constructions are you all gravitating towards? Want to hear from you all on that, and just any interaction in general. I'm here to try to help you with anything that I can last minute, especially with those two field changes. So let's get into our tactics and figure out our strategies for the 2022 Travelers. And we start with the mixed condition model that I created for the week. You will see that there are a couple of, sorry, 1 second as I adjust the camera. There are a couple of glaring omissions, I guess is the word that I'm going to use. I went through a whole lot yesterday thinking about the Travelers in general, trying to narrow down winners and patterns. So the first thing that I want to mention is that I still am under the assumption that it's going to play average. So I didn't put any difficulty, no easy, no difficult. And I also looked at the wind. There is nothing in the forecast except for maybe tomorrow in the PM, there being a little bit of wind to pick up, but not much. So there is a slight, and I mean the slightest of slight, perhaps Thursday AM, Friday PM favor, but it's nothing that I'm using in adjusting lineups or trying to construct, optimal configurations to try to get 6 of 6 through. But there is a little bit of wind expected to pick up in the afternoon on Thursday. So those are a couple of the omissions, and we'll go through the rest of it, and I'll explain what else could be wrong here or could be a weakness. So the first thing I did, I wanted to look at two different metrics. We looked at short course and Pete Dye metrics all week. So I just wanted to see who played the best on short courses and on Pete Dye courses. So that's a full 20% broken out, 10% each for short and Pete Dye. And even though we went through the week and noticed, especially on Monday in the data dive, that strokes gained approach was just not as important as usual on the PGA Tour, it is still my most favored statistic. I still think it's the most indicative of long-term success. It just felt awkward not to have something strokes gained approach related in the mixed condition model, so I put it at 5%. Certainly you could argue that it doesn't warrant it, that the TPC River Highlands doesn't warrant inclusion. This is my own personal take that, or personal bias, if you will, I did want to make sure I put 5% strokes gain approach in there, but definitely not anymore. We noticed that this is a short gain course, so I went 10% in strokes gain around the green long rough. This has always been long rough. It is difficult to scramble, so I didn't put any scrambling per se, because I usually like doing scrambling when it's difficult. So I put 10% in strokes gain around the green long rough, and then 10% in POA or fast POA greens. And I mentioned all week that the GCSA tournament fact sheet had bent and POA. Fantasy National classified TPC River Highlands as POA last year, but it was bent every single year before that. So I was waffling back and forth. I ended up, as I did Monday night, settling on POA. So I looked at the last 24 rounds, 10% for fast POA greens, who puts well on those, 5% in opportunities, and 10% on birdies gained on short courses. So you can see I'm really leaning into the short course narrative or fact, because I don't think there's going to be enough eagles to justify birdies or better, although there will be some eagles. The drivable par 4, the very easy short par 5, believe it's hole 13. So there will be eagles, but more so I just think it's going to be birdies. And we looked at that Monday night pretty heavily, the birdies versus the bogeys. So I leaned birdies and put 10% there. 10% in fairways gained when there's long rough. And this is one that I kind of debated with myself. I knew I wanted to look at fairways gained because I mentioned throughout the week that I thought good drives gained might be the statistic to look at. Greens are generally important, with fairways being extremely important this week at TPC River Highlands. Good drives gained seems like a pretty safe bet, but when I went back and looked at the data, good drives gained here at TPC River Highlands is essentially average, or not less, not more important than any other PGA full field PGA Tour event on the schedule. But fairways gained were a little bit more than a third of a shot, a third of a stroke more important. So I went fairways gained, and I used long rough, not short, not peak die. I went long rough, thinking that if players know that the rough is penal, who really forces themselves to find the fairways? That way they give themselves the best opportunity to hit the green. They don't get into trouble. A lot of this, to be honest with you, was to see if there were any quote big time players, the 10Ks and the 9Ks, that just struggle when there is long rough. Someone like Kevin Kisner, for example, or Brendan Todd, they generally hit their driver straight. They don't hit it far, but they generally hit it straight. So when guys club down, who has trouble doing that? So that's why I went fairways gained in long rough. And then also in the data dive, we really dug into the par 4s. We saw that the par 4s are just so extremely important here at TPC River Highlands. Par 4s in general are about 0.6 of a stroke more important, and then this range of par 4s is almost a half a shot more important. So I put a full 25% in the par 4s, and then put an extra 10%, or excuse me, I put 15% in all of the par 4s, and then an extra 10% in the par 4s 400 to 450. And then the last 5% is in strokes gained par 5. And I looked, and I really debated with myself, because it didn't seem like par 3s were going to be important. It didn't feel like par 5s were going to be important, but yet the most strokes gained by hole by par is the par 5s. So that was a concession on my end to say maybe the data is not portraying the whole story, at least the data that I use in Microsoft Excel that we went through Monday night. So that was a little bit of a concession there on my end. So I put 5% in strokes gained par 5. So there's the mixed condition model that I ended up with. I mentioned that there's no wind. I've really leaned into the short course. If it does play easy or difficult, I don't have anything with that. If the par 3s end up being important, I don't have anything there. And then if this truly does play like bent greens and not POA, I'm going to be way, way off because I've put quite a bit of emphasis on fast POA greens. So there is the reasoning, the statistics that I use, and what I could be weak to for the mixed condition model. And when I ran the model, my top 10 came out to be Jordan Spieth, Patrick Cantlay, Joaquin Niemann, Tommy Fleetwood, Brian Harman, Sung Jae, Rory McIlroy, because Sabatini is in, Rory McIlroy, Tom Hoge, Seamus Power, and Mito. I skipped Justin Thomas. He was originally number 2 in my rankings. He is withdrawn, so I skipped over him. So Spieth, Cantlay, Niemann, Fleetwood, Harman, Sung Jae, Rory McIlroy, Tom Hoge, Seamus Power, and Mito Pereira are the top 10. You will notice one glaring name that is not in the top 10. I discussed this last week. Like with John Rahm, his numbers were being brought down by the scrambling metrics because he was not putting well early in the calendar year. The same goes for Scottie Scheffler. He did not putt well in the events with POA greens early this season, the Genesis, the Farmers, and then for whatever reason he has not hit fairways in long rough much. Do I think he's the 13th because of Justin Thomas's withdrawal? Do I think he's the 13th best player in this field? No, I think he deserves to be much higher. But again, he's kind of having the John Rahm issue from last week in that some of his stats from earlier in the season are bringing him down, especially when they can be tied into other things. So there's a look at the top 10. Not a whole lot of surprise. I mean, maybe Brian Harman being in the top 10, a tad bit surprising, but you see his metrics. I mean, he's number 1 in Pete Dye courses. He was number 1 strokes gained total here at TPC River Highlands in the past 5 years. He's almost top 10 on short courses. Par 4s he takes a lot of advantage of. The one bad thing, he just doesn't give himself a lot of opportunities, he doesn't get birdies when it's short, but he's given himself a fair amount of opportunity, so something's going to even out there, and I'd much rather have this combination, the not converting but giving himself opportunities, as opposed to the inverse. So I really like Brian Harman this week. Anyone who watched last week, I was pretty high on Tommy Fleetwood. That came back to bite me. I'm jumping back on the ship. We'll see if I go 0 for 2. I'm back on Tommy Fleetwood bandwagon this week. I mean, there's really no bad statistic. I mean, he's about field average in opportunities on short courses, and he's the opposite of Brian Harman, in which he's not giving himself a lot of opportunities, but he is converting them. But again, with this being a short game course, he's number 3 in strokes gained around the green when there's long rough. He's really good on Pete Dye courses. He's really good on short courses. There's a lot to like here with Tommy Fleetwood, so I'm running it back with him. It could go 0 for 2, but it is what it is. So there's a look at my top 10. Let's go ahead and go through the salary board here. Let me bring up the projected ownerships, again, according to Fantasy National. In the 10Ks, we have now 5 players. Scottie Scheffler, Rory, Sam Burns, Patrick Cantlay, and Xander. I have one full fade in this area. It's Sam Burns. And it's not that I don't like Sam Burns, but I like Patrick Cantlay so much more and cheaper than Sam Burns. But we'll get into that here in a second. Let me make sure chat's up. So, in the 10Ks, you have 2 guys, actually really one guy that's only getting a middling amount of use, That's Xander at 11.5%. By no means a pivot, but fairly unique for the 10Ks at 11.5%. And then you have Rory at 13.5%. I don't understand why Rory's only at 13.5%. He has played this event extremely well in the past. He is 3 for 3 with 3 top 10s, I believe, or maybe it's 3 top 15s. He's just played this event extremely well. Number 1 in par 4s. His irons have been good. Now, he generally doesn't play the Pete Dye courses the best, and he generally doesn't find the fairways. Or find fairways when there's long rough. That's why I used this this filter on this statistic. Fairways, long rough, fairways gained. Just because I want to see who might struggle when you're forced to club down to find fairways, and Rory seems to be that, although not as much as the others in the 10K, except for Xander. But Xander has he just does not play Pete Dye courses well at all. But anyway, so Xander's at 11.5, Rory is at 13.5. The others are like Scotty Scheffler's at 14%, which is fine. He's so expensive, but that's fine. I mean, number 1 player in the world, he's playing like it. We talked about, he's getting hurt a little bit in my rankings just because of the poor putting on POA early in this calendar year, and when when there's long rough, he generally hasn't found the fairways. But Justin Thomas, he's withdrawn. Sam Burns, 16.5%. He is the most projected owned player in the field this week. Sorry, I don't see it. It's not that I don't want to use him, but I mean, I've got Patrick Cantlay second in my rankings, and to be honest with you, I think he's probably number 1. Yes, Jordan Spieth is said to be number 1, but I would, if I were to not look at numbers, if I were just rating the field, I would put Patrick Cantlay number 1 in this field. He is 4 for 4, all 4 being top 20s here at the Travelers in his career. He loves this place. It's 16.5%, just like Sam Burns. I like Patrick Cantlay so much more. So as chalky as Cantlay is, if I'm saving $200, I like the player more, and I'm at the same ownership as the guy above him, I'm going to take Patrick Cantlay all day. So Burns is a fade for me. So that's one of the players that I'm just going to lose to this week. If Sam Burns plays, well, I lose. Because you can't cover every single base. You can't play every single player. If Sam Burns plays well, I lose. So I don't mind Xander this week. I really don't. I mean, it's troubling that he doesn't play Pete Dye courses well, but otherwise, I mean, this should suit him well. He's okay when it's short. He's very good putting on POA, being a California guy. The irons have been good. It seems like it should be okay for Xander. So in the 10Ks, if I had to rank them, I'm going Patrick Cantlay number 1. I don't care if he's the chalkiest. I think he's the favorite of the field. I just because of the previous course form, the price being the second lowest in the 10Ks. I'll go Patrick Cantlay number 1. I'll go God dang it, I keep saying Justin Thomas. I'll go Rory second, Xander third, Scheffler fourth, and Sam Burns again, almost a complete fade for me. And it's not that I don't like Scotty Scheffler. I say it every week. It's just he's expensive. Nothing wrong with him, but he's just expensive. Let's see. In the 9s, we've got Jordan Spieth, Sung Jae, Joaquin Niemann, Tony Finau, Keegan, Tommy Fleetwood, Seamus Power, and Harold Varner. In the 9Ks, you have 1 pivot and 2 players that are getting a whole lot of use. So the 2 players getting a whole lot of use, Jordan Spieth at 14.5%, Joaquin Niemann at 14.5%. And I'm seeing something that Sung Jae withdrawn? I don't I didn't see that, but I'm getting a note here that it says that he's withdrawn. I don't. If somebody's watching in chat, please put it in chat. I don't think Sungjae's withdrawn. Maybe he has. But I'm going to be assuming that he's in right now. So, in the 9Ks, Jordan Spieth's my number one player. Makes a whole lot of sense. I think this does suit him well. He is. Oh, hey, Josh, thanks for jumping in. He has withdrawn. Thank you very much. So we'll unstar that one. I appreciate it, but glad you could jump into chat. How is your Wednesday going? Have you checked your lineups? Because now not only has Sungjae withdrawn, Justin Thomas is withdrawn, and Brooks is withdrawn as well. So if you've submitted lineups, go and double check. But thanks for jumping in chat, and thanks for letting me know, because I had not been able to check on late field changes getting prepped for the show. So in the 9Ks now, we have Jordan Spieth, Joaquin Niemann, Tony Finau, Keegan Bradley, Tommy Fleetwood, Seamus Power, and Harold Varner III. Yeah, you too, Josh. Good luck. Hopefully we can find some lineups here. Stick around and, shout out some players that you might want to build around when we get into the Excel portion. But Jordan Spieth getting a whole lot of love makes a whole lot of sense. Number one player in my model. He won in 2015 here. There's a lot to like. He generally plays Pete Dye courses extremely well, i.e. the RBC Heritage win earlier this season. Gives himself the most opportunities on short courses. There's a lot to like here. 14.5% is going to be very hard for me to limit my exposure since I like Spieth so much. The other high projected owned player, Joaquin Niemann, again, makes a whole lot of sense. Love Joaquin Niemann this week. And that's one of the reasons why I'm just completely out on Sam Burns. I just think there's enough usable people in the 10s and the 9s that I just don't need to go to Sam Burns. Like I said, I like Patrick Cantlay a whole lot more at 200 less and at the same expected ownership. I don't mind Xander. I like Jordan Spieth. I like Joaquin Niemann. Hell, I like Sungjae, but he's withdrawn. So let's see. Elsewhere in the 9Ks, you've got a lot of middling ownership here. Seamus Power, Harold Varner. Let's see. Both of them are around 10.5%. So the one pivot in the area and kind of in the contest is the guy I'm going back to this week, Tommy Fleetwood. He's at 7%. And this is the beginning of where it seems like, at least per Fantasy National and the analytics community, I'm zigging while they're zagging. I love Tommy Fleetwood this week. A lot of people don't seem to. Tommy Fleetwood plays well on short courses, plays Pete Dye well. He's very good around the green. He has not putt POA in the past, calendar year, I think it is. I set this to, or at least fast POA. But there's a lot to like here. And the one time he played the Travelers, he tied for 30th. So there's at least some course form here. It's not a lot, but there is some course form here. Seamus Power, I really like. As I mentioned, 10.5%. You've got Keegan at 13, makes a whole lot of sense. Local guy, northeastern guy, and then Tony Finau, fine as well at 12.5%. So I like all of the 9Ks, but I am knowing that Tommy Fleetwood is 7% and the next lowest is Seamus Power at 10%. I'll go Tommy Fleetwood, and he's the second player that I'll lose to. If he plays poorly, I'll lose. If Sam Burns plays well, I'll lose. So that is the look at the 9Ks. We'll go to the 8s. Let's see, you have two players getting a whole lot of love. In the 8Ks, you've got your third most projected owned player and your fourth most projected owned player. Mito third at 16.5%, right under Cantlay and Burns. And then you have Davis Riley at 15%. Davis Riley is getting a little bit of the Sam Burns treatment. he's close to a full fade for me. It's not that I don't like Davis Riley. It's the same as it's not that I don't like Sam Burns. But Harold Varner, right above him, $100 more. I really like Harold Varner. Brian Harmon, $300 less than Davis Riley. Love Brian Harmon this week. And Brian Harmon is sitting at 13.5. Like, it's still chalky, but it's a full 1.5% less than Davis Riley. Like Brian Harmon, I really like Denny McCarthy this week. We saw all week that putting is the number one statistic here at TPC River Highlands. Maybe the winners catch up on approach, but consistently top 20s, top 10s, top 5s. The main statistic here is putting. So why not use the best putter in the world? Arguable, but I still think he's the best putter, at least on tour and probably the world. Now, he does not putt POA extremely well in the past year. I think that is a case of small sample size. There's a lot to like here with Denny McCarthy. Great on short courses, great around the green, birdies. So it's the combination, converting and less opportunities. I don't like that, but I mean, he is one exception because he's such a good putter that I do believe this conversion rate will continue if he can give himself more opportunities. He is one of the rare exceptions that I am okay with this combination. And then the par 4s are fine. He's not great at the par 5s, but there's only 2 here at TPC River Highlands, and the irons have been fairly bad. He will have to clean that up this week, but I love Denny McCarthy. Let's see, elsewhere in the 8Ks, Jason Kokrak, I don't hate. It's not my favorite play by any means, but he's great putting on POA. He's very good on Pete Dye tracks. He's sitting at 2%. So I really like Jason Kokrak, but the big 8K play that I like, other than Denny McCarthy, I am really liking Jason Day. I'm really liking Jason Day, and that kind of scares me, to be honest with you. He's at 7.5%. He's been very good at the par 4s. He's very good when it's short. He's pretty good on Pete Dye tracks. He gives himself quite a few opportunities. He's been converting at a fairly decent rate, but on a course that values putting. I mean, the guy is hot with the putter right now. He gained essentially four at the Byron Nelson, gained 2.5 at the PGA, and he gained 4 at the Memorial. And then you come back a little bit earlier in the season. Pebble Beach, POA, 1.5. They're not fast POA, but they're still POA, 1.5. The Farmers, POA, 4. You go back a little further in the, into last year. AT&T, again, Pebble Beach, 3.3. Farmers last year, he did lose 1.3, but on a course that demands putting with a guy that has very, very good putting form and is very, very good on POA, I'll take Jason Day. I'll take my risk with Jason Day. In tournament withdrawal and back issues and all that stuff, I get it. The approach, the iron play has been really, really bad. He has not been finding fairways. I get it. This is like Tommy Fleetwood last week. This is a gut feeling. I like Jason Day this week quite a bit. I've got these guys starred only because they're in the top half of my rankings, but Webb, Mark Leishman, not really all that excited about them. So in the 8Ks, like I said, I like Mito. He's so dang chalky. I'm going to try to limit my exposure to him. I really like Brian Harmon. I love McCarthy. I love Day. I really don't mind Jason Kokrak either. And Davis Riley is like Sam Burns. It's a close to a full fade just because of the ownership and the amount of players I like around the price. Tommy Fleetwood, 300 more, who I'm all in on essentially. I like Seamus Power. I like HV3, all around this price. If you followed me for any time, you know that Aaron Wise generally rates out very well in my data model. He actually ranks 62nd this week, so maybe this is just not an Aaron Wise week, or maybe the one week he precipitously drops in my rankings, you should play him. I don't know. But for whatever reason, the numbers just don't like him here. Poa been bad. He has been finding fairways in the long rough when there's long rough. He's bad at the length of the par 4, so enough reason here to be worried. And I just outright bet Aaron Wise anytime he's in the tournament. Everybody knows he's a FOMO, so I'm okay not using him in DFS considering I have an outright win on him every single time. So when he wins, I might be even on Aaron Wise. But anyway, there's a look at the 8Ks. Let's move to the high 7s. We have one player that's getting any kind of use at all, and then a couple of middlings. So it looks like your fellow contestants are kind of ignoring this area, or if they are coming into here, it is split around quite a few guys. So the one player getting a whole lot of love makes sense because he's played this event very well. It's Brendan Steele. But Brendan Steele does not rate out well for me. Now, he does play Pete Dye courses well. The irons have been good. He plays par 4s well. And again, he has played this event extremely well in the past. But, I mean, he's not been good on short courses this PGA Tour season. He has not been giving himself he has not been converting, so no birdies. He hasn't given himself many opportunities. The putting on Poa has been atrocious. Like, Brendan Steele's a full fade for me, especially at that ownership. Thoughts on Grillo and Hardy? We'll get there. I believe they're in the low 7s. So let me get. Yeah, I see Grillo and Hardy at 7,100. So let me get through the upper 7s, and we'll go to the lower 7s here in a bit. But like I said, Brendan Steele, just full fade for me. Full fade on Brendan Steele at 7,900, right there. Or excuse me, at 7,700. Just full fade. Elsewhere in the upper 7s, I like Bezadenhout this week. These seems like it should be a Christian Bezadenhout course. It is short, which he plays extremely well. He's actually played Pete Dye courses well in his limited exposure to them. He putts Poa well enough. Only 2 par 5s, so that doesn't bother you. And look at this. He's given himself plenty of opportunities. He hasn't been converting them. Eventually, that's going to happen. He's going to convert eventually, and I think this could be a decent week because he's pretty good on Poa. So you've got a lot to like here with Bezadenhout. Seabez is sitting at 8%. Really like Bezadenhout this week. Brendan Todd, I don't mind this week. He's all about finding fairways and around the green, short course, Pete Dye courses. Now he's not been putting very well, and that's an issue. But I don't mind Brendan Todd. Maverick McNeely is Like Joel Damon rates out well at 25th, but kind of lukewarm there. I also like Kevin Kisner. This seems like it should be a good Kevin Kisner course. Short, precision. Again, look at this rate or these numbers here. 14th in opportunities, but 111th in birdies. Something's going to change there, and he's number 4 in putting. This seems like a recipe for Kevin Kisner to get this number to start going lower, as in converting birdies. When you convert birdies, guess what? Your score is going to go lower and you're going to go rising up the leaderboard. Kevin Kisner is sitting at 4%. So I really like Kevin Kisner this week. I really like Christian Bezadenhout this week. Really like Denny McCarthy this week. So if you're a long-time follower, you know what I'm about to say. But if you're new, well, first off, thanks for watching. But since I'm basically all in on those 3, you just don't use them because that's how things work around here. But I mean, seriously, I really do like Kisner. I really like Seabez. All of these other plays, I guess, are fine. Like, I'm just out on Brendan Steele, and he's the most chalky play in the upper 7s. Like, you got Joel Damon at 9%, Siwoo Kim at 9%. Okay. All right. I mean, I don't hate him. I'm not in love with him, but I don't hate him. I understand him. just lukewarm. But Bezadenhout's at 8. McNeely, I'm not there, but he's at 5%. And then, like I said, Kisner's at 4. Harris English is at 3%. Johnny Vegas, I'm nowhere near. Normally, I'm a Johnny Vegas fan because I'm generally all about ball striking. But the simple fact is, this is a short game course, and Johnny Vegas is not good at short games. So, yeah, and he doesn't play Pete Dye course as well. And there's a lot. I'm not there with Johnny Vegas. So that's a look at the upper sevens. Let's move to the lower sevens. You have nobody, and I mean nobody, above 8.5% projected owned right now. So let's start hitting a couple of these players. This is the area of the board. When I mentioned, when I was talking about Tommy Fleetwood, I mentioned that I'm zigging while it looks like the analytic community is zagging. Tommy Fleetwood, a great example. Denny McCarthy, another great example. Brian Harmon was getting a whole lot of love, but I just love Jason Day, Bezadenhout, Kisner. I am really high on these guys, and the rest of the analytic community, at least per Fantasy National, is not. So that tells me I am either completely wrong, or I have found the pivots this week. Time will tell which one of those two is correct. But I'm really confident in those three, and I have been in this area of the price board a whole bunch, and seeing nobody, and I mean nobody, above 8.5% just reinforces the fact that I'm zigging while everybody is zagging. Let's just go through this here. Like Tom Hoagie, love Tom Hoagie this week. Par 4s, fantastic. He converts birdies bunches on short courses. He won the Pebble Beach, a short course. He's very, very good on just flat out short courses. He plays Pete Dye course as well. The irons have been good. The length of the par 4s aren't a disaster. He can find fairways if he has to. He putts POA fine. Now, there are only 2 par 5s, so that doesn't hurt as much. Love Tom Hoagie this week. I think this is a good CT Pan course. Much for the reasons that it's a good Kevin Kisner course, I think it's a good CT Pan course. Requires a lot of precision, not a lot of length. Good at par 4s. He putts well on POA. His irons have been very good. Now, he does not play Pete Dye course as well. That's a little bit of an issue, but I still think this suits well for CT Pan. I really like Charles Howell III this week. The POA putting is scary. And the fact that he has not been giving himself a bunch of opportunities yet converting them really kind of scares me, especially with the combination of the poor putting. I can see this going very south very quickly, but I kind of like CH3 this week as well. He plays Pete Dye course as well. He plays short course as well. 7100. You see, I don't have either of those two starred, Josh, and I'll go into those specifically. I am all over Sepp Straka as well. Love Sepp Straka this week. His win at the Honda, a very difficult short course. Top 10 in strokes gained total on short courses. He converts a lot of birdies, and he gives himself a lot of opportunities. It's a pretty good combination. The irons have not been good, but again, if this course truly does play the way it has the past 5 years, irons aren't all that important. This is just me and my bias having this column in here. Now, the fairways, when there's long rough, quite troubling. He's not been good around the green when there's long rough. I'm going on the Pete Dye, on the short game. I mean, he's been putting POA fantastic. Love Sepp Straka this week. So let's get into Grillo and Hardy. The reason I'm out on Grillo is for one simple. It's simple. It's simply the fact that he is not a short game player. That's as basic as I can put it. Terrible on short courses. Putting on POA and putting in general on Grillo has been bad. He's always been a great ball striker. Never, ever doubting that. The length of the par fours, absolutely terrible. His irons, even though he's a ball striker, his irons have been bad. Like, he's just nowhere near his game right now. And you see, like, Poa's his worst putting statistic. Like, the irons were very good at the RBC Canadian, but I mean, the week before that, he lost 4 at the Memorial. He gained a little bit, but I mean, earlier this season, just really bad. Now, he did gain 3 strokes putting at the Genesis, Poa Greens. He lost 3.2 at the Farmers. He didn't play Pebble. It's really hard for me to back Grillo with this being a short game course. If this were a ball striking tournament, I could maybe get a little bit more confident seeing the irons, seeing him spike with an around the green performance. Grillo's very, very hard to back. Just put it to you that way. I mean, if you have a strong feeling, by all means, go ahead. You got enough to believe here. I mean, he'll find the fairways, so he should not get himself in a whole lot of trouble. He's fine on Pete Dye courses. He gives himself enough opportunities. So, I mean, that's the good half of the equation. You'd rather see a guy give himself opportunities and not convert them, because eventually it's gonna have to normalize and he'll start converting. The reason I don't think it's going to normalize too much is he's just a bad putter. So, and then Nick Hardy, he had one fantastic tournament. It was a major. I don't know. The Canadian was good too, but again, this is a short game course. He's lost so much in short game lately. If this were another ball striking event, sure, it'd be encouraging. 1.7 approach there, 4.4 off the tee, and then top 15 at the U.S. Open. You'd have to imagine all of these, or majority of these, are positive. With this being a short game, and that's not what he's known for. He is known for being an iron player, and these numbers are getting drawn down or brought down by one poor Honda tournament. I can't get there. I just can't get there. If you're asking me to use one of the two, I would use Nick Hardy. But I don't feel great about either one. I hate to bust your bubble there, Josh, or if you had planned on using them, I just don't see it. And if they play well, you can come back into chat next week and tell me how much of an idiot I am. Because, I mean, that happens a lot anyway, but I just don't see it. So there's a look at the low sevens. Again, at each price level of the low sevens, I like somebody and a whole lot. I love Tom Hoagie. C.G. Pan, I really like. Charles Howell III, I'm probably the lowest on Charles Howell III of these 5 players I'm going to list, but I still like him. I love Sepp Straka. Him and Tom Hoagie have been in a whole lot of my lineups, just a ton of my lineups. And then at 7,000, take a look at Adam Long. I like Adam Long a lot. He doesn't play Pete Dye courses well, but he's very good on short courses. He'll find fairway, so he shouldn't get himself into trouble. He's very good at the length of the par fours. Again, this is kind of a Tommy Fleetwood, Denny McCarthy, Christian Bezadenhout type thing. Just kind of a gut feeling. Kind of a gut feeling. I kind of like Adam Long this week. And then let's look into the 6Ks, where again nobody is above 8.5%. You do have Adam Svensson at 8.5%, and I don't mind Adam Svensson. He is sitting at 6,800. I don't mind Adam Svensson. You see 42nd. He plays short courses extremely well. I believe it was the Honda when Sepp Straka won that he was very, very good at. Yeah, so he tied. Yeah, look at this. He tied for 9th at the Honda. He tied for 7th at the Sony, another short course. He plays short courses extremely well. He played the RBC Heritage extremely well, another short course. So I completely understand the reasoning behind Adams Vincent. I like the play. There are two to three players in the 6Ks that I'm going to highlight for you all. I don't like going down here, especially because I like so many guys in the low sevens. Even if I'm building a stars and scrubs team, I'm using 3 guys from the low sevens and comfortable doing it. But if you want to come down to the 6Ks, take a look at Russell Knox. He is a former champion here in 2016. It's not a ball strikers course. This is on the previous course form course fit narrative. I mean, he'll find fairways. He plays Pete Dye courses fine. He's fine when it's on short courses. He's around the green is fine. So take a look at Russell Knox. I don't love the play, but at least he is a former champion. Aforementioned Adams Vincent, kind of like Adams Vincent. Take a look at a couple of guys down here. JT Poston. This one, it's all predicated on the putting. That's all it is. It's all predicated on putting, and I think polo putting is going to be important this week. He gives himself a lot of opportunities. He converts them. He plays well on short courses. He's good around. It's a short game and a putting narrative. That's what I got for JT Poston. Now he certainly has his flaws. Like the irons are atrocious. He can be wayward. So if he's wayward and not good with the irons, it ain't gonna fucking matter what he does here because he's gonna be putting for 6 instead of birdies and pars. But at 6,600, there's a narrative, a reasoning for using him. I kind of do like JT Poston if you're needing to come down to the 6Ks. And then the last one I'll mention is Matthias Schwab. Again, more on the putting in the short game. And then he can play the par 5s well when he needs to. But when you're coming down into the 6Ks, you're gonna have to accept some flaws from some people. By no means am I comfortable going down to Matthias Schwab. If I bottom out, it's a JT Poston, and I don't feel great about doing it, but I will come down here if I'm trying to squeeze in like a Rory, Xander, Tommy Fleetwood type top of the lineup. But there's a look at the 6Ks. Take a look at JT Poston. I don't mind Vincent. Take a look at Russell Knox for previous course success. There's a look at the price board. And if you missed the intro or the beginning of the mixed condition model, not a lot of wind in the forecast, so I didn't even bring up Wind Finder. Tomorrow afternoon looks like it could be a bit more windy than the rest of the cut portion of the tournament. So there's maybe a slight, and I mean very slight, Thursday AM, Friday PM favor, but that has no effect on any of the lineups that I've been making. So I just figured I would mention it. So let's move to Microsoft Excel very quickly. Let's start making some lineups here. Transition and bring up that. All right, so for those who play tiers contests, and again, I'm no expert on tiers, I can only go by the assumption of, classic ownership. Tier 1 is Scheffler and Rory. JT withdrew. I'm going to go... Ooh, that's close. That's close. I'm probably going to go Scheffler, to be honest with you. I think I'm going to go Scheffler. Tier 2, Burns, Cantley, Xander, Spieth, and Neiman. I got to erase some J here. So Burns, Cantley, Xander, Spieth, and Neiman. For me, it's Cantley. I think he's the number 1 player in the field. I know that might be heresy to hear when there's Scotty Scheffler and Rory and all that. But Patrick Cantley's 4 for 4 with 4 top 20s. He just loves this event. I'm going to go Patrick Cantley. Tier 3, Tony Finau, Keegan, and Seamus Power. Sungjae and Brooks were in this tier. So Tony Finau, Keegan Bradley, Seamus Power. I'm going to go Seamus Power, hoping that he is unique, and I still like the play. Although Keegan's fine, he's a local, like Northeasterner. He's fine. Tony Finau should be fine, but I'm going to go Seamus Power. Tier 4, you've got Tommy Fleetwood, Harold Varner, Davis Riley, Aaron Wise, Mito, Brian Harmon, and Mark Leishman. For me, Leishman's a no. Aaron Wise is a no. Mito's a no, only because I expect him to be pretty damn chalky. So I'm going to go either Brian Harman or Tommy Fleetwood. I'm going to go Tommy Fleetwood. See the reasons in the Classic or going through the price board. I'm going to run it back with Tommy, even though it didn't work out for me last week. But I think Brian Harman would be a good play too. Tier 5, Webb Simpson, Denny McCarthy, Keith Mitchell, Jason Day, Jason Kokrak, Brendan Todd, Brendan Steele. For me, it's between two players. It's Denny McCarthy and Jason Day. I think Jason Day is the volatile play. I think he is the boom-bust option. I really like Denny McCarthy. I think he's a safe play. Tier 6, Bezadenhout, Joel Damon, Maverick McNeely, Siwoo, KH Lee, Harris English, and Kevin Kisner. For me, it's Christian Bezadenhout pretty clearly, although you could convince me on Kevin Kisner. I think it's a Kevin Kisner course, but for me, it's Christian Bezadenhout. So there's a look at tiers. Let's make some classic lineups. So delete those sheet columns. I've got actually a couple of lineups or shells for you all that I've been building that I really, really like. And I'll share those with you. But let's see who our contestants, what our contestants are doing. And if we're trying to build a chalky lineup, well, we're going to start with the chalkiest of chalky people. It's Patrick Cantlay. And this is one player that I am not going to be able to get away from. Like I said, I think he's number one overall, even though he's listed at third, really second, because JT withdrew. In my rankings, I think he's number one. So Patrick Cantlay is where your fellow contestants are starting, and it's really, really hard to gauge where your contestants are bottoming out when you have Adam Long at 8.7. Like I mentioned, you have Adam Svensson down here. It's like 8.2. We'll say they bottom out at Adam Long, and we could change that. But I guess Adam Long, and then they'll probably come up to, I don't know, a Brendan Steele maybe. Doesn't give them a whole lot of wiggle room. Brendan Steele, maybe a Brendan Todd. Moves them at 8,600 per. Oh boy. We'll say Mito and Brian Harman. Okay, so what they could be doing is something around these, and this is going to be $100 over, but something along these lines, like a Cantlay, Mito, like Brian Harman's getting a whole lot of love. Maybe they come down off of, say, a Brendan Todd. Maybe they go to like Joel Damon, even though he's not as popular. Like there's a 13% projected ownership. Still pretty darn chalky. But again, like Brendan Steele is the lowest priced double-digit owned player. So your contestants are going a lot of different places. If they're going to try to build stars and scrubs, they're coming down to Adam Svensson. And then, let's see, do they have anybody else in the 6Ks? I mean, Svensson's at 8%. You got Adam Long again at 8.7. I'm going to try to use different names. But it looks like it's, maybe CT Pan. But, really it is. Yeah, let's just use CT Pan just to get some different names in here. So maybe they go CT Pan, 9.4 Siwoo, maybe. And then they're going to try to stars and scrubs from here. They'll maybe go a Sam Burns. They go like a Davis Riley, and like 9,000's Varner. He's not getting the most love. Maybe they come off of Riley. Maybe they go something like a Keegan. Keegan, and who's at 85? Webb Simpson. Again, it's Brian Harman. It's a $100 over. There's another look at perhaps a stars and scrubs-ish type build. Again, it's just your fellow contestants are all over the place, at least per Fantasy National. So what I have been doing, because Patrick Cantlay is so chalky, I've been just completely ignoring the 10Ks. And I mentioned how there's so many players in the low sevens that I like. So, I have been going like Tom Hoagie, mixing in either like a Charles Howell or a CT Payne again, and then going Sepp Straka. And having those three, this gives me 9,400 per these three. So then, that allows me to go, say, a Jordan Spieth, who is a bit chalky, but who I like a bunch this week. It allows me to go Tommy Fleetwood, who I'm very, very high on. And then a 9,100 is a Seamus Power. And that's at 8.5%. Matching your big GPP contestants. That's a lineup that I love, and I've been building a whole lot like that this week. Maybe you're not on Tommy Fleetwood. Maybe you're not on Jordan Spieth. Like if you want to go to Xander, actually, you know what? If you even want to go to Rory, again, you're going to have to use some combination of three guys here in the bottom, and you might have to come down into the 6Ks, but I'm going to still try to build this same shell with these bottom three. You go Rory. I really like Denny McCarthy this week. And then that leaves you at 89, who's Davis Riley. If you like Davis Riley, I'm fading him, but you could go Davis Riley. If you come off Denny McCarthy, come down, say, to a Jason Day, who I'm really high on. That's that same 9,100 for Seamus Power, or a Harold Varner. There's another 8.5% projected own. That's why I say I'm zigging when everybody else is zagging. Like, there's so much in the low sevens that I like. I have no problem mixing and matching a whole ton in the low sevens. Mackenzie Hughes is somebody else in the low sevens, short game, around the green, putting. Aaron Rai I'm not as high on, but he played, I believe it was the Farmers, extremely well. That was POA. Charles Howell, Matthew Neesmith, Kevin Streelman, a former champion here. I'm not high on Kevin Streelman, but if you want previous course, form, you can start with Russell Knox and Kevin Streelman, and those are two former champions. And that's saving you a whole lot of money and is pretty darn unique. I'm not really all that high on either, but if you are a believer in prior course success or course fit, that would work. There's one more lineup that I have been kind of gravitating towards. If I do come down into the sixes, it's been JT Poston, and then I come up. I've been using Tom Hoagie, but I'm just going to try to use some different names here. So as much as I'm not on those guys, Josh, because you mentioned it, I'll go ahead and put a Nick Hardy in here. And this allows you to come up into the 10Ks. I mean, you're only at 1% with two positions already filled. So, like, you can come up to a Scotty Scheffler if you want. But if you don't come into the 10Ks, like, you have potentially 4 spots for, 9s and an upper 8 maybe. But if you do like Scotty Scheffler, maybe you can go a Scotty Scheffler and maybe a Tony Finau. And that leaves you 7,800 per, which conveniently is the Zadenhout, who I really, really like, if I could spell his name. Apparently I can't spell his name. Bezuidinhot. There we go. And then at 77, it's like Joel Damon or Brendan Steele, Maverick McNeely. Like, I'm fine with Joel Damon. It's not exciting. But there's an 8% projected ownership. With a Nick Hardy, yes, you're coming down into the 6K, so if you're not comfortable with that, you'd have to maneuver around, maybe remove JT Poston, put in somebody you're more comfortable with, and move off of a couple of these players. But if we put JT Poston back in, damn it, help if I could type. Maybe you don't want to come into the Scheffler. Like if you want to try to maybe fit in 3 9s and an 8, like you could go Joaquin Niemann. We'll say Keegan. I've been using Tommy Fleetwood forever, but maybe you go Keegan, Seamus Power, and that leaves you with 8,200, which is Keith Mitchell, who I'm not exactly the highest on, but it'll work. Jason Day, like that's a different type of lineup that you can build. I would still classify it stars and scrubs because you've got 4 guys here, Jason Day being like a middling, but 4 guys here that are pretty high priced, surrounded by 2 bottom. But again, I've been gravitating towards the 3 low 7 type lineup, just to use some different names here. I really love Tom Hoagie at 7,400, so anything I've been doing is Tom Hoagie. But 74 is Tom Hoagie. I mentioned Sepp Straka. I love Sepp Straka, like Troy Merritt, good on putting. He's at 71. I don't mind Adam Long either, so maybe I bottom out at Adam Long. Maybe use a Charles Howell, and this still gives me basically 9,500 per player here if I wanted to. So I am quite unique this week. I am different than a whole lot of the analytics community, it seems. So it's going to be all or nothing. I have a feeling for me. Josh, thanks for jumping in chat, and thanks for letting me know that Sung Jae had withdrawn. I had not seen that since I was prepping to go live. But thanks for jumping in chat, and good luck with your contests, and good luck to everyone else in their contests. Thanks for tuning in, for watching. I always appreciate the support. For all of the wagers that you've made this week at the Travelers, for all the DFS contests you've entered this week at the Travelers, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.